This is Word on the Reef, where marine science meets adventure. Join Tanya Murphy and Brett Goodban as we plunge into the wonders of the Great Barrier Reef and explore the mysteries beneath the waves. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Word on the Reef. I'm your host, diver and conservationist Tanya Murphy, and joining me, as always, is marine educator and fellow ocean enthusiast Brett Goodban. Good morning, Brett.
Hey, how are you? How's everyone's week been? Hope it's been as busy as ours.
Today I'm very excited, Brett, because it's almost the day where we get to vote for stronger reef protection policies.
Yep.
Are you ready? Have you warmed up your writing hand? Have you practiced numbering boxes in order of your preference?
Yeah, I've been listening to all the fish at the aquarium and out on the reef, and they know who they're going to vote for, so I'm going to follow them.
There's a lot of people out there who get a bit rusty on their voting skills, and a lot of people have been asking me about how preferential voting works in Australia. We're very lucky because unlike US, Canada, UK, we have a preferential voting system in Australia. So do you want to have a go at explaining how preferential voting works, Brett?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. So in Australia, as you said, we're lucky to have preferential voting, which means if I vote for a minor party, like Trevor the sea star, to be my favourite aquarium animal, he doesn't get enough votes to win, then my vote isn't wasted. Rather, it passes to my second preference, which of course is Chang, our big Queensland groper that everybody knows. And sometimes in some electorates, minor parties and independents like Trevor the sea star do actually get enough votes to win, which makes our parliamentary aquarium more biodiverse and healthy.
That's what you want.
Right, yeah, and instead of being dominated by the two biggest bullies in the tank, Chang and his mate Happy Gilmore, our Malabar groper.
I love that explanation, having a biodiverse ecosystem in the aquarium, and that's what you want in the parliamentary process as well, having a diversity of representatives.
Yep,
now,
that's it.
As we have been discussing over the last couple of weeks, this election is super important because some are calling this election the reef's last real chance, because if we don't make big cuts to emissions this decade, we may not get another shot in time to save it. The decisions made in the next term of government, especially around climate targets and accelerating the shift to renewables, will determine the fate of the Great Barrier Reef. And as we heard in the news, if anyone tuned in to the news at 10, the Ningaloo Reef over in Western Australia is experiencing severe bleaching at the moment as well. So it's really stretching across our entire coastline. So coming up later on the show, we'll be hearing from Port Douglas tour operator Brett Wright, who's been taking visitors to the reef for 30 years. He's witnessed the impacts of climate change on the reef firsthand. His business has been impacted by extreme weather events as well, and he wants to see you voting for strong climate leadership from our government this election. But first, we're going to hit the streets of Cairns and find out how people in Cairns are feeling about climate change and the reef. And if you've been out walking or driving around the suburbs of Cairns or the CBD over the past couple of months, you may have seen on people's front fences and in shop windows some beautiful purple signs that say, protect our reef.
Yeah, there's lots of them. It's been awesome.
Yeah, and others that say climate action for our reef and the same beautiful purple coloured sign. And you may have wondered, A, where are all these signs coming from? And B, how do I get my hands on one? So mystery solved, because today in the studio we are joined by someone who can explain what those signs are about. Zef Aster, an outreach campaigner and long-term volunteer with the Australian Marine Conservation Society. Good morning, Zef.
Good morning.
Morning,
I'm
Zef. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show today. I understand you are a born and bred Cairns local, and I know you've done your fair share of snorkelling on the reef because I saw you out there on Fitzroy Island at Christmas time. What does the reef mean to you?
It means so much more than just what it means to me. It means a lot to all the animals that live in it, everything it supports up here in Cairns. It's our greatest asset, supports the tourism industry, which supports our cafes. When I give signs to cafes, they take them because they know if people aren't coming up here for the reef, they're not going to get as much business. And it just means people are connected to country when they're thinking about the reef and they're passionate about the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So what inspired you to get involved in volunteering for environmental causes in Cairns and particularly for AMCS?
Well, just my passion for my community and all the fun things up here, all the creeks, rivers, mountains, oceans, beaches. We have so many animals that aren't anywhere else in the world. And everyone comes up here to see it and locals enjoy it just as much.
Yeah, we do. So let's talk about these beautiful purple signs that we're seeing all over town, which say protect our reef and climate action for our reef. Zef, tell us, where did these signs come from and what is their purpose?
Well, if you see one around, you can actually scan the QR code and order one, and we'll come out and we'll deliver it to you. And if you get a flyer in the letterbox, you can order one from there as well. And they come about because just seeing that the community really needed a voice, and people that are passionate about these causes, they want to be heard. So our role here as volunteers for environmental groups is to give those people a voice and really make them feel heard, and that there will be changes, put some hope into things and have a space where people can get involved. And it's been really amazing seeing the reception of people as well.
Yeah, that's actually what I was just going to touch on. How do you feel the response has been leading up to this election? Have you found people are more positive to wanting to help save the reef? Do you think their connection with this next election in protecting the reef and the environment has been positive, more positive than ever?
Mostly people are very receptive. It's felt like really 90%, and that 10%
Wow.
that's not very receptive, it hits me because there are so many people that are receptive to it.
That's right. And I think that this is the result of people having it drummed into them for years after years after years with politics, where they think that it's gone too far to do anything. But in actual fact, their heart's saying, I want to help, I just don't know how. And that's where you amazing volunteers come in, isn't it? You can go to their door and go, hey, I've got the answers for you. I'll help you out. And it's amazing. You've done an incredible job.
That's exactly it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all of these signs all over the place is a really great way for the community to show their support for protecting the reef. And when leaders and decision makers drive and walk around the community, they're going to see, wow, this is a community that really, really, really wants us to protect the reef. And they just can't avoid it. Wherever they go, they're going to be seeing this show of support. So people are wanting to jump on board. Everyone's asking me, where can I get one of these purple signs? And of course, like you said, they can scan the QR code on the sign to get more information. And it's been really incredible to see that huge display of support for the reef around the Cairns community. And I think if the fish could get out of the water and go and knock on people's doors and tell them what's happening out there, they would.
Oh, they're ready.
But since they can't do that, luckily they've got you and some other amazing campaigners to do it for them, Zef, and be their voices. So I know you've knocked nearly 2,000 doors over the past few weeks, and you've had hundreds of conversations with the community about the importance of protecting the reef and what we need from our leaders. And so you said that probably around 90% of community members have been receptive to talking about the reef and climate change. Can you give us some examples of some of the types of responses you've gotten from the community during your conversations, especially in terms of some of those positive interactions?
Yeah, these conversations have been so important. You know, it's not about making the perfect case. It's just about starting a conversation. And all the volunteers have been so brave in doing that. I've seen them, you know, be very anxious about this, and then, we'll just start talking to people. And suddenly, you know, they're less anxious because it's a good conversation. And we hear things just like, of course I care. And, that's a campaign happening up here. And you've done these things before in the community? That's amazing. Like, they get so surprised to hear about things that are actually happening on the reef and things that humans are doing to help. You know, they might say, what can humans do? But there is so much. And I just love being able to provide them with different things to do. Like, you can do an email, you can put a sign up, you can do a petition, or if you can't do those things, just talk to your neighbor, talk to your family. Like, say you had somebody come to your door today, like,
start the conversation with somebody.
That's what the signs are doing, and they're starting a conversation in that street that can spread out further.
Yeah, I've had people talk to me and say, my neighbour has one of those signs and I'm jealous and I want one too. So it's starting a conversation in the whole neighbourhood, and people are saying, like, I just assumed everyone are not worried about the reef. But when I saw my neighbours putting up these signs, I realised everyone actually does care, and it gave people so much hope. I saw a study released recently where they surveyed people all over the world, and they found out that more than 80% of the people in the countries they surveyed, which included America, Australia, China, India, all those countries, more than 80% of people do care about climate change and want to see more action on it. But most of them falsely believed that nobody else cares, because people aren't talking to each other enough and having these conversations, realizing, hey, you care, I care. Wow, maybe everyone actually cares. We can actually make some change on this. If you've just tuned in, our guest today is Zef Aster, outreach campaigner and long-term volunteer with the Australian Marine Conservation Society. So we've just been talking with Zef about some of the conversations they had out in the community. They door knocked nearly 2,000 houses, had hundreds of conversations, motivating people to understand that they can take action to help protect the reef and be part of the solution. But I'm sure there have been some really funny moments or like surprising moments as well, Zef.
I love coming to a door where they've actually got some like real thoughts in there, and that I love it also when they're just like, yeah, I'll take that sign or I'll do that email. But I also do really enjoy it when I can see like what that person thinks. And even if they do think some outlandish stuff, it's been so fun because they'll still take a sticker that says fight for our reef. They'll still take a sign and they'll still be like, yeah, we got to put some pressure on him, eh?
Yeah.
We got to make him do the right thing. I
The
love
greatest
that.
Aussie response. I'm busy
Like-
having a barbie, mate, but just leave that here.
Yeah, I think because I'm coming to their door from non-partisan, like it is sort of an election campaign effort to just get a bit more understanding out there about, one, what the community is passionate about and how policies impact that. And if people ask further questions, I have some information I can tell them from a non-partisan point of view. And that makes all the difference, I think, coming from that non-partisan point of view, because I have had many people that have said outwardly they're big, LNP supporters, but they're taking a sign. And it just shows that, people aren't just numbers. Like, people still care at the end of the day. And I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The reef unites all of us, no matter which end of the political spectrum people come from. Everyone cares about protecting the reef, which is why all political parties, no matter who they are, should really be highly prioritising the reef if they know how important it is to everyone up here. So which suburbs do you think were your favourites and the most receptive about having these conversations about the reef and climate change?
Oh, it's so different because, for example, I could say the more middle-class suburbs were only because they had a bit more time, maybe. Like, some people didn't have time to talk to me, like some younger people that were quite busy. They're out the door, but they're like, yeah, chuck the sign up, do that. And I love that. But I also love having conversations as well. So some of the sort of older people, like I felt like they had time and the older generation really wanted to have those conversations and just talk. Like they were like, oh, somebody's at my door, let's have conversation. I really like that.
Did that surprise you that the older generation, our seniors, were giving up a lot of their time to learn about? And I say that with all due respect to our seniors. I can stand and talk to them for hours at the aquarium. I just love it. And I've noticed that over the past few months at work, when I've been talking to customers at the end of my coral shows, etc., that the people that are approaching me are our seniors and going, I didn't know that. I had no idea that the reef was that big. I had no idea the animals that lived on it and how much that will affect this gorgeous country that we've lived in for 70 years if we don't protect it. So it seems to be this big shift happening now. Do you find that our senior community are being quite receptive to it on your door knocks as well?
Yeah, I love it.
It's great, isn't it?
I had one lady say, at first, her response was just, I'm old, so I know. And I thought of like, oh, what's it going to be? But then she said, so I know that the reef is important and that we need to do something.
Oh, wow. That's a roller coaster, wasn't it?
Wow. So what did you learn overall, Zef, from, I'm sure you learned lots of things from this experience of having all these hundreds of conversations with people about the reef and climate change in Cairns?
I learned that I really enjoy just people's personal stories, and coming from my background of being a local and having personal story and connecting it with people that want to be heard. And there's other people also doing similar campaign, CAFNEC, so I've talked to those people that are door knocking as well, and they've said the same thing, that the biggest thing is just people want to be heard.
So an important part of your job, a really important part, which it sounds like you're really good at, is listening to people. So you're knocking on people's doors and saying, hey, you're feeling worried about issues in the environment or in the reef, and you're feeling like no one's really listening to you or no one cares. And here I am on your doorstep, ready
it's
to
your
listen.
opportunity to talk to me about it.
Yeah, which can be scary, right? Sometimes they have things that are really hectic and they really want to tell me a lot about it.
Yeah. Like they're sick chickens or something completely off topic.
Yeah, like gold poachers up here in the tablelands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you didn't do this door knocking alone, of course. You had another campaigner, Sean, shout out to Sean, and a number of volunteers helping you. So it was very much a supportive team environment. But it does take bravery, like you said, for people to step up and have these conversations. So all of you really deserve a pat on the back and a pat on the back from all the fish for being their voice and going out there and talking to people. So shout out to all those volunteers who got involved in this campaign. Many people say they're nervous to talk about climate change or environmental impacts on the reef, even with their own friends and family, let alone with strangers at their front doors. So what advice do you have for people who want to have these conversations and raise awareness, but maybe don't feel 100% confident about it?
Oh, yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing that's really helped is there's this phrase, now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. And just having these conversations is leading to something so important. So any conversation, whether you botch it up or you don't have all these statistics to pull from, if somebody asks something and you don't know how to respond, you can say, I don't know about that, but what I do know is this, and come at it from a space that you do know and talk from what you feel.
Yeah.
And share your own personal experiences, because that's unique to each of us. Each of us has had, hopefully, everyone in Far North Queensland's been lucky enough to have some connection with the reef, whether they've been out snorkeling themselves or have relatives and friends that work in the industry. And so if you just talk to people about, well, this is why I care and this is what friends or family in the tourism industry have seen out on the reef, then you don't need to know everything about facts and statistics, because they're always getting updated. The science is always being updated. So you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be a climate scientist to start a conversation with a friend or a friendly stranger. And I know as well that, like you said, the majority of people you talk to are receptive out there, are more than willing to talk about environmental impacts on the reef and impacts of climate change. And so it's just a matter of realising this doesn't have to be a scary conversation. It can just be a friendly conversation.
Yeah, totally. I'm no expert, but I've become someone able to have this conversation. So that just goes to show how much just little by little you can become someone who is more confident in your voice.
It's like I was saying to you before, you can't fake the passion for what you have. And people will pick up on that, right? It's the same at work. The guests always say to us, you guys just have passion oozing out of you. Like, we want to talk about it, and people are drawn to that because they go, you know what, this person knows their stuff. They're amazing. I want to engage with them. It's a unique skill.
All right. Zef Aster, outreach campaigner for the Australian Marine Conservation Society. That's just about it for our first half of the show. If people want to maybe get involved and help out with doing some of these actions that you've been doing to help protect the reef, there's obviously a big volunteer team that needs help with these activities, and it doesn't stop with the election tomorrow, that the activities are going to keep going on. So do you recommend that more people get involved? What do you think are the benefits of it, and how can people get involved?
Oh, so many benefits, and not just to your personal self, obviously, but to everyone and the environment around you. And, there's no one way, like, in doing this sort of work. If it's community action and if it's environmental, get involved and just become part of the movement that way and find anything and go from there. But, Fight for Our Reef campaign up here has some amazing volunteers that would love to see anyone. So get involved. Awesome people.
Yeah, it's great. Well, the seventh natural wonder in the world thanks you for all your amazing work. You're all angels. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
You're listening to Word on the Reef. Jump aboard for a fun and factual dive into marine science on the Great Barrier Reef and beyond with Tanya Murphy and Brett Goodband.
Good morning, everyone. If you've just joined us today, we've been talking about how the Cairns community feels about seeing the impacts of climate change on the Great Barrier Reef. And someone who's been seeing those impacts firsthand is Port Douglas tour operator Brett Wright. Not to be confused with my co-host, Brett Goodband.
Yeah, kite surfing's not something I've tried yet, that's for sure.
There's too many Bretts in the house in the marine scene.
Yeah, we're all legends.
So Brett Wright has been living in Port Douglas and working on the Great Barrier Reef for 30 years. His business, Windswell Adventures, offers snorkeling, paddleboarding, diving, kite surfing and island hopping tours. He's witnessed the impacts of climate change firsthand on the reef. His business has been impacted by extreme weather events and he wants to see people voting for strong climate leadership from our government this election. But he also experiences the ongoing magic and beauty of the reef every day and has witnessed the way it continues to change people's lives for the better. This is what he had to say.
Yeah, well, Windswell is basically connecting people with the ocean and the wind and the reef, of course. I started Windswell back in 2004. I flew to Western Australia and did my kite surf instructor ticket. Previously, I'd been running dive boats and snorkel sort of sail vessels out of Port Douglas. And there was just always wind. And I was like, far out, we've got to use this wind for something. And then doing that course in WA gave me the opportunity to go down to 4 Mile Beach. And over the years, I've taught thousands of people to kite surf. I've seen their lives sort of change for the better. Some of my students are champions and also run kite schools all over the world. And then, you know, my clients as well, their kids learn to kite, and then to see them come back every year and see them travel all over, just, you know, sharing our love of the sport and the passion and the wind and how good it makes you feel.
I'm not a kite surfer myself, but I've seen some videos of you out on the pristine turquoise waters of even the outer reef. It must be one of the most amazing places to go kite surfing.
Yeah, well, it truly is. Like, I've been kiting since 99, so that's the start of the sport. And yeah, over the years, some of the interactions I've had with nature on a kite are just mind-blowing. I've really got to think back to the best of them.
Tell us the top interactions.
Yeah, like the kite is a really good vehicle to go anywhere. So yeah, the reef flats are cool as to cruise across, and in some good kite locations there's like sand caves that run for 4 or 5 miles with little channels in between. And even though we're sort of observing and conserving and not spooking marine life around, you can actually just cruise up and watch, you know, schools of fish and sharks and turtles and rays and just all of those critters go up into these channels. So yeah, up at Eagle Isles, this side of Lizard is pretty good. Hope Isles is amazing. You've got all different terrain there. But even just closer to home, between Ewell Point and 4 Mile Beach, there's inshore reef systems. I've seen ospreys grab fish straight in front of me. Wow. And then battle with the wind, maybe grab 2 bigger fish at the time. And then, yeah, back to Eagle Isles, like at the end of each run up and down that reef, there's humpbacks cruising past the channels as well. So, you know, you can jump. Well, I don't know about you, but I can still jump twice the size of a palm tree. And when you do those jumps and you look around, like I've seen squadrons of like 50 or 80 stingrays underneath us as well. And they're cruising in formation over the reef. It's just those visions you get. Those encounters are pretty cool.
Wow, it sounds amazing. And I know you've got a couple of boats and you can do it all. You can put your kite surfing equipment on your boat. You've also got paddle boards. You've got snorkeling equipment. Any type of adventure that you want to have, you can pretty much do it with Brett. I've been on a paddleboarding adventure at Low Isles with you and we saw incredible stuff. It was amazing. Rays, sharks, turtles. It was great. So, yes.
Yep. Guilty of that.
Can recommend.
Well, the paddleboard's another good thing because, you know, not everyone wants to kite surf, but paddleboards give us an all beach access to all the islands. Like the other day, this is one of my favourites recently, was there was 2 families and tide was dropping real fast. So we're over at Woody Isles and the sharks are coming back out at us. And so one hits the dad, right? Or just narrowly misses him, goes under his board. And then the next minute, another shark comes out and just fits under his board. And then 2 minutes later, the third shark comes flying through and actually nearly gets stuck under his board, like hits his board. And so I'm like, geez, mate, you're a shark magnet, you know?
Should probably point out to all those listeners that these are harmless
Yeah, they're the usual characters. They're little white tips, black tips, and sometimes tawny lemon sharks. Yeah, so we're just lucky. We got them well trained. We actually know them pretty well, so we're not talking about anything nasty here.
Wow, it sounds like a really incredible encounter. But now I want to talk about impacts. So what changes have you seen over your years working on the reef, especially with regards to climate change?
So the bleaching, I think, is the worst in more recent times. The recent bleaching events have now kind of reached way more than what I ever, imagined. I was hoping it wasn't going to be this bad, but the evidence is there. 2016, the bleaching happened to the north. Alarm bells went off, but it was north of Cairns and Port Douglas, so no one really kind of worried too much. But then the following summer, it was super hot, the water temperature, and there was no wet season cloud around, no rain, no monsoon rains to cool the ocean down. And I watched that bleaching event unfold, underneath us, and that was a shock. And I almost sort of called it. Like I said to my guests, I said, this water temp is just way too warm. And I can sense these corals are a bit stressed down there. And then didn't have any trips for a week or so, not even. And then the next time we went out, it was like, wow, like this is very bad bleaching. They're saying up to 70%, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, and then again, for it to happen 2 years in a row now, that's unprecedented in my lifetime.
Yeah, so you alluded to that the reef is currently experiencing its 6th mass bleaching event in 9 years, meaning that bleaching is now almost annual, and this is the second time it's happened back to back, so 2 years in a row. How does climate change impact your business, both in regards to the reef and then in regards to extreme weather, floods, landslides? I mean, we've had it all in the far north, haven't we?
It affects us in a whole lot of ways, like even just taking bookings and trying to guarantee the best weather, location, equipment, conditions. We've got activities for all of that, but it's been a lot harder in the last 10 years to predict what it's going to do tomorrow. Where before that, running Windswell, we're hanging onto a kite, we're that close to the wind, we know exactly what it's doing. It was dry, sunny, windy, almost every day and consistent. Where now you get, wind forecasts and then you got this rain coming through with it. In fact, the water temperatures are higher, so you don't have that sea breeze effect. Land heats up, cool sea breeze comes in. So, yeah, just the quality of the wind, which is what we're looking for. And then just some days, I guess I've had to cancel or reschedule more and more often. So that makes it a bit harder for me and for people planning, their holidays and that. So,
wow. So even the wind is being impacted by climate change. It makes sense. And Cyclone Jasper brought flooding at the end of 2023, which
landslides.
So one of the only main roads to get to Port Douglas was blocked off by multiple giant landslides, and you took some great pictures of the landslides. Can you describe it for the listeners who didn't get to see it?
Yeah, well, that was a really good December, January season for our bookings that year. And then straight away, we kind of knew after day 4 of rain and 3.1 metres or whatever, that we better just quickly give everyone their money back and let them reschedule. But we started doing transfers from Cape Trib to Cairns to get people in and out.
Because the roads were closed, yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. Like, we went past Ellis and seen the landslides all the way along and doubled back and anchored just north of One Palm Beach there, north of Ellis, paddleboarded in, walked up the road. There was 150 metres of logs, rocks, starting off small ones, to then rocks like the size of my boat and my car on the road, and then 60 metres that way. So there was like 220 metres of rocks on the road and maybe 20 foot high. And then when you looked up, it was just like the rocks had turned into liquid. And then they'd just look behind you and there was just trees, massive trees, just pulverised. So they'd just come down the mountain,
Yeah, and this happened in multiple places due to that extreme rainfall. Have you ever seen anything like it?
I mean, normally we brag about 1.6 metres of rain in 24, 48 hours, in the Daintree. But just to get the cyclone come in, park over us, and then turn into a rain depression and not move, that's what, the water did the damage. You only got to look at the coastline north of the Daintree and there's just landslides everywhere. They were more shale, sort of clay ones, but the ones on the coast road were like big granite boulders, you know?
Yeah. In Cairns, and particularly around the foothills of Red Lynch, for example, there's a lot of houses at the bottom of ranges. Can you imagine a boulder bigger than Brett's boat coming down, and not just one, but 220 metres wide landslide of boulders that are the size of Brett's boat coming down onto your house? So this is a big problem, but as it was, it blocked off the road. And not only that, but Port Douglas and Mossman were flooded, crops were flooded, houses were flooded, power outages and water contamination, right? So
Yeah, we had big problems with our water supply. So initially we thought, cool, no boats sunk, no boats got blown over or ran into each other.
that's good.
And we survived just another cyclone. But the weather went real flat after it. So all the fresh was pushing out onto the reef. And then past sort of flood events like this, we've had just the good old southeaster come up behind it and just push that fresh water away, or at least the wind swell, the waves and that helps turn the fresh sitting on top of the salt, helps mix it back in. But that didn't happen. And so there was considerable bleaching at Low Isles and all the inshore reefs. I've been speaking to mates of mine who spear and fish there. They're like, the fish are gone and, you know, it's going to take time for them to come back. And because we're talking about almost 100% or 90% bleaching or what have you, are they going to come back?
Yeah.
Even, you know, coral trout and stuff were found dead on the beaches at Wonga Beach.
During
Beach.
Cyclone Jasper and the floods. Yeah. There was thousands of fish washed up near the Daintree, apparently.
So whether you're a climate change denier or not, well, you got to look at how often are all these events going to happen. I guess it comes back to what can we do or what are we doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and as an individual, or what can each business do, each community together?
How important is it for people to continue visiting the reef and seeing the beauty that it still has to offer?
Oh, I reckon super important, because even though we just chatted about the mortality and stuff, and we've got to be honest about it, it is happening, it has happened, but then you got to look at the good things. So, you know, I took my boys diving recently out at Low Isles, and it just happened to be one of those really dead flat days, and we went out to the northeast point, and holy, not only was it Kyan Reef's first dive, but it was one of the better dives I've done for ages, as in there was the stingray when we got down the bottom, and then the big turtle swam past. But there was like 50 mangrove jacks, and there was schooling barracudas, and there was like big coral trout, like big fellas, because they know they're protected there.
Yeah.
And the corals there are really good on the point, so, you know, they were spared. So I think you need to spend more time in the water. You need to try and, the more you're out there, the more you actually see what is real and what's not. And then that appreciation for nature is what's going to save it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the experience that people have by visiting the reef and learning about it is priceless in terms of educating people to be more aware of what's happening and educated about what they can do to help. And, you know, you can have some areas of the reef having high rate of bleaching and
Others not.
but if you dive down in the right spot, you can still find beautiful stuff. So yeah, definitely still recommend. I was lucky enough to go out with Brett to Low Isles a few weeks ago. It was incredible.
It was a great day.
Yeah, we saw so many amazing things. It was really beautiful. So if I've spent 15 years diving and snorkeling on the reef and I still have a good time when I go out there, even more reason for anyone else out there who hasn't had a chance to see it should be coming out and having a look. Let's talk about actions to help protect the reef. What sort of activities are you involved with to help protect the reef and give back to the community?
Yeah, I guess just as a individual, you know, just trying to do my little bit, as in change my spending habits and trying to buy products that last longer, that don't require throwing in landfill or shipping from China, trying to buy local, natural, sustainable, that sort of stuff. You know, even my kite brands, some of them have really proved like they're act out of sight, which I'm pretty happy with. But then, yeah, we've been involved with the beach cleanup since the get-go. We ran the boats over to Snapper Island, dropped some volunteers off on all the beaches, and then we regroup on the tail. We then count all the marine debris that floats up. Some people call them treasures, you know. But yeah, we figure out where they've all come from. Then you could actually go back to those guys and say, hey, you know, this is not good enough. Why are these ending up in the ocean, in the water in the first place? So that's one way is, you know, Plea, Tangaroa Blue. There's plenty of other environmental groups out there. There's research projects going on now like citizen science. I think everyone's actually really trying to do something, you know. So, yeah, you hear about all the bad and you kind of stick your head in the sand, really. But then if you just get up and try and get out there and get involved, that's what we need to do.
Less time doom scrolling, more time picking up trash with your community and getting involved with other people who care, I think.
Yep.
That's what everyone needs to do for their mental health as well as the health of the planet.
Learn to kite surf. Yeah, put the Xbox controller down and fly a kite.
100%.
No,
I think your kids are extremely lucky, and wanted to highlight back to one of your kids' names
spoiled.
was named after your greatest love, right?
Yeah, the reef, yep.
You've got a son called Reef. How cool is that?
And Kai's Kai, because, you know, in Hawaii, Kai means ocean.
Oh, wow.
So we've got ocean, and Maddie's young daughter's ocean as well. So, yeah, the kids are the future, you know. I was lucky I had a lot of good opportunities when I was young, thanks to my dad and then, you know, a lot of the other operators out of Port Douglas and even Cairns. So I think it's just important that we give them the opportunity. I don't think it's like their responsibility we're making it, but I reckon we should just give them the vehicles and the tools that they need to continue on and make this awareness better and better and get the word out there.
What sort of questions do you commonly get from customers about what they've perceived about what's happening on the reef, and what do they sort of want to know?
The most common question that I always joke about, but sitting at Lowell's, it's like, so Bretto, does the water go all the way around this island? And you're like, well, mate, you should go for a walk and find out, you know? But yeah, lately it's been a lot more, is the reef dying? How can we help? The people are hearing that it's struggling, you know, and I think it's starting to get the attention that it deserves, you know.
The best opportunity we have in the tourism industry is to give people some actions they can take and make them feel hopeful about what they can do to make a difference, I guess. I want to talk about the E word, election, that's coming up tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah. Last week, we heard from the Australian Conservation Foundation, and they said not all the major parties have a credible plan to fight climate change. So they analysed all the political parties' policies on the environment and climate change and scored them out of 100 points, 100 different things to do with protecting the environment. And the Liberal Party got 1 point out of 100. The Labor Party got 54%, 98% for the Greens, and 0% for the Katter Australia Party. So there's a big difference, and how people vote is obviously up to every individual, but it's important for everyone to take into consideration those things if you care about the environment and the reef. So, Brett, in your opinion, what's the risk to the reef if we don't take more ambitious action quickly?
The real risk is, you know, is it going to be around for future generations and that? Without the reef, there's not, you know, structure for all the fish to live. And then if other food chains and supply routes sort of break down, how are we going to survive? Mm-hmm. So, you know, there is a real risk, I reckon, that the reef's not going to be the same. So the government's got to step up, you know, exporting all this coal. Like I delivered a boat down the Goldie last year and I was just blown away by how many ships were waiting to get into Abbott Point. Mm-hmm. And then...
Yeah, I think Hay Point is one of the biggest coal ports in the world, around 1,000 ships per year coming in and out of the Great Barrier Reef to go to Hay Point, you know. And
they're all burning crude oil, which is not exactly the most efficient oil. But yeah, we've got to look at all other alternatives. You know, our economy just relies too much on the mining and the oil and the gas. And then, you know, if you're watching punter politics, which you should, it's back to us, the power of the people, I guess. We've got to be the ones that say, this is enough.
That's what democracy means. It's Greek for power of the people. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
And I heard you mention punters politics there. That was a good shout out for anyone that wants to learn more about politics in Australia and I guess the intertwining of fossil fuels and big corporations and how they influence everything. Check out punters politics. But now I want to talk about the election again. Everyone's got an important job to do with the federal election coming up tomorrow. What would you like to say to voters who care about the reef but feel unsure about which policies will actually make a difference?
I just think you should have this conversation amongst your family and your friends. Tell your friends honestly which party's got your vote and why, as in, who's doing their job or not. And then go from there because, let's face it, it's such a close sort of battle, isn't it?
Thanks very much for your time today. I guess we'll wind it up there. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, not really. No, thanks for listening.
Book your trip to go and learn how to kite surf because the kite surfing season has just started.
It's here.
Yeah. So I've never kite surfed before, but Brett's comprehensively talked me into it. So in the next couple of weeks, I might be looking at my first kite surfing lesson.
Just take off.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
That was Brett Wright, owner-operator of Windswell Adventures, talking to me about how the reef and his tour business have been impacted by climate change. He wants to see you voting for stronger climate leadership from our government this election to protect our reef, our tourism economy and small businesses like his, which depend on a healthy reef here in Far North Queensland. If you're still unsure about which parties have the strongest environmental and climate policies, I recommend you visit the Australian Conservation Council's elections scorecard page. Just visit acf.org.au/scorecard. Another really cool tool which you can use is buildaballot.org.au, which allows you to do your own research before you vote. Just fill in a survey about your values and what's important to you, like the reef and other issues. It will show you which parties align with those wishes and explain what their policies are and even give preferencing advice. So check it out. Just visit buildaballot.org.au. Sadly, that's all we have time for today. Thanks to you, all our listeners, for joining us on Word on the Reef.
Yep.
I'm Tanya Murphy and my co-host is Brett Goodban.
Thanks, folks. Have a great week.
If you came in late, you want to catch up on our show, don't forget you can search for us online on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts and listen back to any of our episodes. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and tune in next Friday at 10 a.m. for our next show. See you next time.
Bye.